Hey everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Gripe. I know they're all special, but this one is really special. So apparently, I just can't stop talking about these two movies, so I figure it's only natural that eventually the two would need to be discussed in the same kind of voice. And those two movies are Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Captain America Civil War. Both of these movies have actually fairly similar plots to them, sort of about, our favorite superheroes fighting each other, and but they are both so different as, finished products, and it's only natural that now that the DC universe is starting to build and grow a little bit, that there's going to be the obvious comparisons to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which Captain America marks the 13th movie, not to mention the TV series that are part of the same universe. So I wanted to go down, discuss these movies a little bit more because I feel like I didn't do enough in either review to really touch on some of these things. But the comparison is really what we're kind of going to get to here. The end result might be which movie's better, which one's not, but hopefully the end result is to see kind of where both of these universes are, and which can be either exciting or a little nerve-wracking for the future of our comic book movies. So we'll get right down into it. It's interesting that these two movies are so similar in terms of like the story and the like the bottom theme, because both of them were actually supposed to come out the same weekend. I remember when they announced that Batman v Superman and Civil War would be coming out the same weekend. Um, people were flipping out, just the idea that these two massive movies would come out the same day. A lot of people probably thought, well, Batman v Superman would crush Captain America, absolutely crush it. But as people really got into Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy, they started to think, well, maybe Marvel actually has the momentum in this case. And especially as, things started rolling out, not just reviews, but just once we started seeing things from these movies, then it started to shift a little bit more to Captain America. And ultimately, it became a matter of kind of studio chicken, which one's going to flinch first. And ultimately, Batman v Superman flinched first, came out in March, whereas, the Civil War got the more like lucrative May, first weekend of May date, which it wanted. And now here we are. We have these two movies, and they couldn't be more different, even if they have somewhat similar ideas. So, but let's look at each of them, kind of a few points, here and there. Let's look at the leads. We're going to start with, the lead characters, because that's the draw of these movies. Both of them, the draw has been who is leading this movie. When I say the leads, for Batman v Superman is pretty easy. For Civil War, it's a little bit more challenging, but there's at least a very clear winner here in terms of like how well it's done. Batman v Superman might as well be a Batman movie, even though it's meant to be a sequel to Civil War. It's supposed to actually be a Superman movie, but they made it into a Batman movie that has Superman in it. Whereas Civil War is a Captain America movie that has all these other Avengers in it, but it's somewhat balanced. And it's a good balance between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers as Iron Man and Captain America, respectively. There's a lot more. It's a little bit more balanced in that regard. So you do really get more. You get more development even from just those two lead characters. Even though the movie has so many more, you've got Scarlet Witch, you've got Black Widow, you've got Hawkeye, Ant-Man, Spider-Man, War Machine, Falcon, Zemo. I mean, you've got so many characters in Captain America Civil War. It's almost like, well, how do any of them get any sort of character development? But the focus is on the two main characters and sort of the ancillary third character. Same thing with Batman v Superman. You've got sort of that ancillary third character with Wonder Woman kind of joining the mix. Whereas in Civil War, you have Bucky. So they both actually kind of have, a core trinity of characters, if you will. Um, and I'm not going to say which one necessarily does it better, but I mean, it's just interesting how both of them, they have that exact same kind of um, main character, lead character setup. But I just see Civil War does it a little bit better. There's more balance to those main characters versus Batman v Superman, which I'm not gonna lie. I mean, Ben Affleck stole the show in that movie. And it was a great Batman movie, but it's Batman v Superman, and Superman's barely in it. He barely says anything. He barely does anything. So, so you've got that's the leads in the movie. And then kind of what both movies are is team building. Now this is where Marvel has a significant advantage, and this is one of the things that has worried me about DC from the get-go is, when they made Man of Steel, and they had, like the Wayne Enterprises satellite, you knew that they were going to start building a team at some point. They were going to start using this as their jumping off point into Justice League. But so in Batman v Superman, they kind of do that right away. They've got Batman jumps right into it. Wonder Woman is just kind of thrown in there. I'm still trying to understand why she was there in the first place. And fortunately, they just keep those three characters. It doesn't really go any further than that, but they do mention some of the other characters like Cyborg, Flash, Aquaman. So they really are starting to build that Justice League, army that they're going to have. Whereas Avengers in Captain America: Civil War, this is the 13th movie. They've had 12 other movies, technically 11, but basically 12 other movies to really start building who these characters are, the larger universe, the larger story that's going to be happening. So I mean, it feels almost so natural, and there's the gripe I had with this movie was how they just kind of threw some of the characters in there, and that's because it is just this like, it's just a gathering of friends. It's like, it's Hawkeye. What's up, Hawkeye? Hey, look, Ant-Man. And of course, I know who I'm gonna get next. It's Spider-Man. And even though this is Spider-Man's first, venture into the MCU, it still is just, let's bring him in and just start, piling it in. So, but having 12 movies behind it, it really doesn't feel like something that they forced together. It might have seemed forced at the moment, but the teams themselves are not forced together. Whereas with Justice League, it's like they're just trying to throw it out. Just like, here, let's get it out there in the second movie in the series, because they know they've got a long way to go to catch up with where Marvel is. It doesn't feel as organic. Then we talk about villains. Villains make a superhero movie. In Batman v Superman, you get Lex Luthor, you get Doomsday, so you get a couple of interesting villainous characters in there, but the motivation behind Lex Luthor is extremely weird. There's and it's not really defined particularly well. That he has some, he knows that Darkseid is potentially going to come, but he doesn't, beyond that, there's no real understanding of why he wants Superman and Batman to fight each other, why he wants there to be this war between these two heroes. Zemo, on the other hand, he doesn't care about any of the Avengers. He just wants the Avengers to burn. He basically wants to tear the Avengers apart. And so he does that by, by like learning their weaknesses. He finds their weaknesses and exposes them, exploits them, and just uses it for them to fight against each other. I mean, Lex kind of does the same thing, but you don't know why he's doing it. Whereas with Zemo, he actually does have a real motive behind it. He has something. He was in Sokovia when Ultron attacked. His family was killed basically, and he basically sees the Avengers as this like threat with no kind of oversight. And it's like, well, let's just destroy them. Let's just let them destroy themselves within. So it is a revenge plot, but he does it so effectively that he doesn't need this like grand scheme, this grand like world scheme. He doesn't need to create a doomsday kind of character. He has an opportunity. He's got 4 Winter Soldiers basically at his disposal, and he kills them instead of basically using them against Captain America and Iron Man. So, but honestly, I mean, Lex is really goofy. He's almost like a Joker or a Riddler or something, as opposed to the Lex Luthor that we've seen kind of in the past. That doesn't mean he's bad. It just means it's a little bit different. And then Doomsday is just not even gonna get into Doomsday, but Zemo is just so understated and almost vanilla in terms of villains, but how he operates is what makes it so effective in that movie. And so in the competition between these two movies, DC has so many better villains, in my opinion, in terms like especially in Batman's universe. There's so many great Batman villains. I mean, we're gonna get a villains movie from them with Suicide Squad, which is gonna be interesting to say the least. Whereas with in this movie in Civil War, you don't really have a villain, but at the end of the day, he kind of proves you don't need a villain. You just need somebody to kind of light the match and watch it burn itself down. Is basically what Zemo does in that movie, which is important. Having that motive actually gives it some weight. It actually gives it something worth you know like being interested in. You actually are interested in Zemo when you learn that he actually has a real motivation behind it. And, he is a little bit more just like, what? You guys, I'm going to watch you guys burn and just step away. As opposed to Lex Luthor, who's really just trying, almost like he's trying too hard to be a villain. Which is kind of strange, and that the lack of definition of what he's actually after is what's so strange, and just using the fear of Darkseid as his motivation is kind of strange. um, so then we have ending, the ending of the movie. The way that Batman v Superman ended, I'm actually probably one of the few who appreciated that they killed Superman, not because I don't like Superman as a character, but I think that it was a good way to kind of bring some weight to that story. And, I mean, when you introduce Doomsday, you kind of have to kill Superman. It's just, comes with the territory. But I liked how they actually gave it some weight by, there's actually something to fight for. There's some, some purpose at the end of this. Whereas in Civil War, nobody dies at the end. In fact, Zemo tries to kill himself, and Black Panther stops him before he does. Which is, you know, I'm not sure if that's the. I mean, if Zemo comes back, that would be great. But if not, then it's like, why? Why did you save him? And I mean, I understand with the Black Panther doesn't want revenge to. He sees that revenge is not going to solve his problems. So letting Zemo kill himself is certainly not going to solve his problems. But at the same time, hopefully they have some purpose for Zemo moving forward, because obviously he's an interesting character that we've only scratched the surface of. Um, Versus Superman dying is a pretty big moment, and it's we know he's not dead. We know that he will come back just like he did in the comics, but it gives that weight to it. Whereas with Civil War, the weight is in them not killing each other. The weight is not it's not that Tony Stark finally gets this revenge on the Winter Soldier for killing his parents. It's that Tony Stark and Captain America are basically ruined at the end of this. They're broken, which is pretty significant when you have 12 other movies behind it that see these people coming together as a team. Like, you remember those scenes in the first Avengers movie when they're just like, when it's like, we came together and we fought, and this is the moment when that unity, when that brotherhood is shattered, and it's pretty significant. So I actually liked both endings. I thought I appreciated both endings. But one movie definitely points to the future, whereas the other one is, gray, and rightfully so. The ending of Batman v Superman has Lex kind of going nuts and giving, that motive of Darkseid. He doesn't explicitly say it, but he pretty much says Darkseid is coming. So we know that it's going to happen relatively soon in the Justice League universe. In Marvel, this one doesn't really point to anything, and you'd wonder, it's like, well, why? I mean, we've been teasing Thanos since the Avengers, so we've been teasing him since Phase 1. We've barely seen him since. He showed up in Guardians of the Galaxy just as kind of a side character. He showed up at the end of Age of Ultron, so it's like what is that, where is Thanos going to finally come in? Obviously in Infinity War, but this movie has nothing to do with that, which actually I appreciated in a sense too, because I don't need every single movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to be just another step in another link in the chain. It's interesting that they went this route because it means that while it is a part of the larger narrative, you do have things that happen along the way. You have events that challenge that, ending, which, it'll be more significant when they do come back and, when they have to fight this greater threat. And now you actually have, you have these teams coming back together. You have Tony and Cap, coming back together to really, to fight again, but it's going to be a while. It's because they've reached kind of a breaking point now, which is certainly, it's significant, and I'm glad that they chose that route because it actually almost feels more like a comic. They actually achieved making a comic book movie here in that it's not just another link in a chain. It's part of the main universe, but it's its own story. It's its own autonomous story, which is impressive. Whereas with Batman v Superman, it's the first. I mean, it's really the first in this expanded universe. So they kind of have to start teasing other stuff. But the question is, how quickly are they doing it? Are they going to jump right into Darkseid in the next movie? I don't know. They might, and if they do, hopefully it's entertaining at least. But I mean, with everything else that's going on with the Justice League universe, you just have to wonder, you know, are they going to be able to recover? And I'll get to that in a minute. So, two vastly different movies, but with some similar plot themes. Obviously, with these heroes battling each other. Um, a lot of great stuff coming out of this. I mean, both ones, kind of going back to the team building. Both of them have such great teams. And I'm really excited about the Justice. I'm not as big a DC fan as I am a Marvel fan, but I'm really excited to see what they do with it, because I've been pleased with Henry Cavill's Superman so far, and Ben Affleck nailed it as Batman, Bruce Wayne. Gal Gadot did pretty well as Wonder Woman. Obviously, we didn't see a lot of her, and it was kind of shoehorned in there. But I mean, I'm definitely optimistic about her. Um, and we got to kind of tease some of the other characters. Jason Momoa as Aquaman. I don't remember the actor playing the Flash, but I mean, we kind of get some of those other characters in there. Jeremy Irons as Alfred. He played a great Alfred. So I mean, there's a lot of potential there, and I'm actually kind of excited to see how that goes. Same thing with with Civil War. Not only do we have all these characters that we've come to know over the last 12 movies, we've also got new characters like Chadwick Boseman playing Black Panther. Awesome, absolutely awesome in this movie. Um, Paul Rudd still funny as Ant-Man. Tom Holland coming in as Spider-Man with Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. I mean, you've got these great characters that they're bringing into the universe. And yeah, it's not going to be the Iron Man, Captain America type of Avengers that we're going to see over the next few years, but we're going to start seeing some of the more interesting parts of that Avengers universe start to pop up, and I'm really excited, especially about Black Panther, because Chadwick Boseman's a great actor, and he did a superb job in this movie as Black Panther. So when we get down to it, though, there's a really sharp divide between these two movies and kind of the two universes in general. And one of them, they're going to have to come to terms with that soon. The other one, they're just going to keep doing it because it's working. And that's the tone. So, sorry. So, the tone of these movies is so incredibly different. Like, take Batman v Superman. The tone of that movie is dark. It is super dark. I mean, it's humorless. People talk about it as being a humorless movie, and yeah, there's a joke here and there, but realistically, it is. I mean, for a movie that has a alien super mutant type of character jumping from skyscraper to skyscraper, blowing energy out of his face, it's extremely dark and brooding and moody. Which even though they both kind of have these similar build-ups, in one, in Batman v Superman, they look at what happened when Superman fought Zod and how much destruction and all that took place in the Avengers. They're talking about, people getting, innocent people dying, cities falling, all this stuff that's happened over the past 12 movies. And yet the movie itself is not this just dour, dark, moody film. It actually has a lot of humor and brightness and all that. And you really can, the characters are more entertaining. I'm not saying that, they're always funny, but they certainly are more entertaining. But then when the movie shifts, when you get into like the real core of what Civil War builds up to, the tone does shift and you get a little bit darker, a little bit darker side of it, weightier tone, which is, impressive that they're able to pull that off so well. That makes me wonder, is DC going to be able to do this? Are they going to be able to get these characters to, I mean, obviously they're never going to be the same. We're never going to get that Christopher Reeve type of Superman in these movies. You're not going to get the Joel Schumacher Batman in these movies. But the question is, are they at least going to introduce something that is not this just like, I mean, when watching Batman v Superman, half the time I thought I was watching Watchmen because it was that just like weighty and dark. It was, it's no shocker that Alan Moore is, he really likes his Batman type of stories, because it's dark. It's really dark stuff. And they pulled it off well, but the question is, can they sustain it? Can they sustain the Justice League if they stay that dark? Whereas Marvel, they're going to continue doing exactly what they're doing, and it's going to continue succeeding until they just run out of steam, until they run out of new ideas. So I guess the next test, which is Doctor Strange, is going to be pretty telling for Marvel. Okay, I have to address the fan reaction, but first, I needed that so badly. Okay, fan reaction. So here's something that has been bugging me in going through, listening to people bitch about Batman v Superman. They keep talking about Batman going on a killing spree, which he does. Batman kills a bunch of people in this movie. Which, by them saying is like, this is not Batman. Batman doesn't kill people. What is he doing? And they're just I mean, it was when, just like when Superman killed Zod. It's like, Superman doesn't kill people. What's going on? Batman kills people in every other Batman movie until you get to like, the Nolan movies. And even in the Nolan movies, he kills somebody in Batman Begins, probably killed somebody in, Dark Knight Rises. I mean, to say that Batman doesn't kill people is ridiculous. He kills people all the time in some of the old movies, in like the Michael Keaton movies. So that's one of those things that people are just like, and I get, like Lex Luthor wasn't for everybody. The plot was a mess. But the whole Batman killing thing, that's just ridiculous because let me counterpoint here. People love these Marvel movies. One of the things that they never complain about is how many people they kill in these Marvel movies. Like Captain America has a pretty high body count. Iron Man, pretty high body count. One of the best scenes in the original Iron Man is when he's targeting all the terrorists and he just shoots them all at once. They didn't just go to sleep. He killed them. And nobody seems to care. But it's, Batman has a code, and so he must constantly abide by this code. There's no way that he cannot, even though we've seen Batman kill people in pretty much every other Batman movie. But in Marvel, people are getting killed left and right, and it's like, oh, but it's still fun, it's entertaining and all that. But they did get, people were really disappointed that there were no deaths. There were no significant deaths, with the exception of Crossbones, who I can argue wasn't necessarily that important a character. He was kind of a thug. But to get really upset about Batman killing people and then complain about the fact that, no one died, maybe no one significant died, maybe they wanted War Machine to die or they wanted Captain America or somebody to die in this movie, that's great, but, pick what side you want. I mean, people were really, it's amazing how people get so worked up about, one thing in a movie, but then in another movie it's like the exact opposite. So I don't know. Fan reaction to these movies has been kind of strange, but that's kind of to be expected. You're going to get, I mean, anytime you get a movie like Batman v Superman that is so polarizing, of course you're going to get that mixed reaction. So the last thing I want to just kind of point out is that the way that these movies have left us is, to me, optimistic, because you've got at the end of Batman v Superman, Superman's dead. Batman and Wonder Woman are kind of like, saying, we're going to need to do something. We're going to need to join together because something is coming, aka Darkseid. And I like that they're ready to build, that they're ready to do this. I'm not necessarily a fan of how quickly they're doing it, because it just seems like they're trying to throw this together really fast. But I like that they want to build this. They want to build a team, build some strength there. Whereas at the end of Captain America Civil War, I'm absolutely in love with the fact that they are broken. The Avengers are broken. As a team, you've got Team Cap, who is pretty much either in jail or on the run, and you got Team Iron Man, who is feeling guilty as hell about everything they've done, but are still willing to abide by this law in order to, move forward and continue to be the Avengers. So, just where these two are currently, I'm really optimistic about both, and I can say that with certainty on the DC side too. With Marvel, I mean, it's been tested. We know that Marvel is going to be successful because we've got some pretty big ones on the horizon. Whether Doctor Strange is good or not, we'll see. Black Panther, we know, is going to be awesome just by the stuff we've seen. Spider-Man, we know, is going to be awesome. So Marvel, I'm not as worried about, but DC, we should be worried about. But I think I'm still optimistic in a sense that they've got a good core. It's not the best, it's not the ideal core, but they've got a good core, and if they just can, iron some things out, simplify their plots just a little bit so it's not such a murky mess, give us some, good villains, the way that DC definitely does. That's why Suicide Squad is going to be kind of a litmus test for how DC is going to go moving forward. And, just give Ben Affleck more control. Give him a lot more control. That guy won an Oscar, 2 Oscars for different movies. So, and he will. So we'll be looking forward to that. So again, I could talk about these movies so much because I loved both of them. Batman v Superman wasn't as big a fan, but I certainly, appreciated it for what it was. Civil War, I loved it. I absolutely love Civil War. But they're both good movies, and like I said, I'm pretty optimistic about the direction that both of these universes can go in. More optimistic about Marvel, but I'm certainly optimistic that DC can bring it together. They just need to shore up some things and, be a little bit more patient. If they actually can get some patience, if they put out a really good movie, they've earned some patience so they can put it out right and not try to just just throw stuff at the screen and see what sticks. Because that's one of the things that pretty much killed Batman v Superman for a lot of people, is they just threw everything at the screen. If they can, tighten that up a little bit, they could definitely, rival Marvel in a big way. And I, kind of hope they do, because I'm not sick of comic book movies yet. Close, but I'm not sick of them yet. So until I do, I want to just see good, fun comic book movies. And so far this year, I've seen 2 of them. So, alright, so I'm going to stop talking about comic book movies for a while. My next review won't be about that. So, thanks again for watching this special episode of Key Gripe, and I will see you next time.